Okay, so what you're looking at here, this isn't just a wildfire. It's a human tragedy, it's a logistical nightmare, and it's a full-blown systemic test unfolding in Chile's Biobío region. It all kicked off on January 16th, 2026, and was quickly declared a state of catastrophe. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what that means.
But before we dive into the data, the government response, all of that, we need to feel the human experience. This quote from a resident: "The fire passed over us." Man, it just cuts right to the heart of it. This isn't some abstract event you see on a map. It was a terrifying, life-altering force. So that's where we're going to start, with the human cost. We're zooming right in from that satellite view down to the ground level to see the immediate personal impact on the communities caught directly in this fire's path. And the speed was it was staggering. What's really telling on this slide is just how fast this all happened. You had a perfect storm, a blistering 38 degrees Celsius heat wave, that's about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which fueled 24 separate fires. In less than 72 hours, boom, over 20,000 hectares were gone. I mean, look at the curve on this graph. It isn't just steep, it's almost vertical. And with that kind of speed comes a terrible, terrible price. At least 19 people lost their lives. This wasn't a fire that people could simply outrun. Tragically, people were found in open fields and inside their cars, which is just a horrifying testament to the inferno's shocking pace. And this really illustrates the chain reaction perfectly. On the left, you see the aftermath, the skeleton of one of over 250 buildings that were completely destroyed. And on the right, you see the reason why, from a human perspective: a desperate exodus. More than 50,000 people were forced to evacuate towns like Penco and Lurkin, literally running for their lives as the flames closed in. And here again, we have a voice straight from the chaos. Maria Cid, a Punco resident, just captures the absolute terror of that moment. Fleeing with your kids, in the dark, with a wall of fire just minutes behind you. I mean, think about that. A horrifyingly close call that thousands and thousands of families had to face. So how on earth do you fight an inferno like this? Our next section looks at the massive official response. We're talking about the mobilization of an entire nation. And, well, the friction that you always get when a plan meets a chaotic reality. The response from the top was swift, and it was decisive. President Gabriel Boric declared a state of exception. Now, this is a really powerful tool. It lets the executive branch suspend certain rights, bring in the military to enforce curfews, and mobilize all national resources. The message was crystal clear. Everything is on the table to fight this fire, including getting over 3,000 firefighters on the ground. But here's where that friction really becomes clear. While the federal government was wrestling with the huge logistics of it all, coordination lag, command centers being far away, the reality on the ground was terrifyingly different. The mayor of Penco, Rodrigo Vieira, voiced the desperation that so many people felt. He said, "A community is burning and there is no government presence." It's just such a stark contrast between the top-down plan and the immediate desperate need on the front line. You see, this crisis wasn't just about fighting flames. It triggered a whole cascade of effects across the entire country. In this section, we're going to dig into how this one fire put Chile's financial, political, and even its atmospheric systems under incredible stress. Okay, now here's a really crucial point. The president's declaration, it wasn't just a political statement. It was like flipping a giant financial switch. This flowchart shows exactly how it worked. The State of Catastrophe Declaration triggered a mandate from the CMF, that's Chile's Financial Markets Commission. And their order was simple: prioritize speed. Get insurance payouts into the hands of victims right away to pump liquidity into the devastated region. And the financial stakes here were enormous. We're looking at a total insured exposure of $120 million US. That is the amount of capital that insurance companies were on the hook for, and it represents a massive, massive test of their financial stability. So where is all that money going? This chart breaks it down pretty clearly. A huge majority, 64% of the claims, were for property, people's homes, businesses, farms. The rest, 36%, was for cars and other assets. This really shows the concentrated devastation on the absolute core of people's lives. And remember that CMF mandate for speed? This is what it looks like in practice. The goal was to settle nearly half of all claims, that's 47%, in just 6 weeks. That is an incredibly rapid pace, even faster than the benchmark they set during the Valparaiso fires in 2024, and it put immense pressure on those insurers. This crisis also echoed around the globe.
This map actually shows aid flowing into Chile. We saw diplomatic support and an official aid donation confirmed from the U.S. Trump administration. And at the same time, you had non-governmental organizations like Chef Jose Andrea's World Central Kitchen activating teams on the ground to provide food for first responders and victims.
But the ripple effects weren't just financial or political. They were atmospheric. The fire may have been raging in Biobío, but as this map shows, the smoke traveled 500 kilometers north, all the way to the capital, Santiago. This triggered a regional health advisory for millions of people, which just goes to show that in our connected world, no disaster is ever truly local. So, after all that, where does this leave Chile? In our final section, let's look at the bigger picture of this crisis and map out the long and difficult road to recovery. Right, it is so crucial to understand that this was not just a random accident. It was the result of a few huge factors all converging at once. First, a decade-long megadrought left the landscape incredibly dry. Second, an intense heat dome pushed temperatures to extreme levels. And finally, the interface. That's the critical zone where towns and homes push right up against wild combustible forests, creating the perfect conditions for a disaster of this size. So, to just quickly wrap it up, this single event tested the entire nation on 4 distinct fronts. The humanitarian front, with its awful loss of life and property, the operational front, with a massive evacuation and firefighting effort, the financial front, which triggered a $120 million insurance event, and the political front, defined by that state of exception and the friction between local and federal government. And the recovery, well, that's going to happen in stages. The immediate priority, of course, is containing the active fires. The short-term focus will be on that first wave of insurance settlements, just to get people back on their feet. But the long-term project? That's going to be the slow, difficult work of rebuilding entire communities and all their infrastructure. Which really leaves us with this final thought. A fire like this destroys capital. We're talking homes, businesses, lives. But the recovery, that is what truly tests a society's resilience. As these extreme events become more and more common, the real question isn't just how we fight the last fire, but how do we build systems, financial, political, and social, that are designed not just to react, but to truly endure the next one.